At the outset of planning Sculpture by the Sea, I announced to a family lunch the idea of the exhibition. And my mother said, well, you do know that Ron Robertson-Swann is the father of a friend of yours from school, and he's one of the leading sculptors in Australia, so why don't you give Ron a call? When I telephoned Ron, he was immediately very receptive to the idea, partly because 20 years ago there were very few opportunities for sculptors in Australia. Contacting Ron was of vital importance because it immediately meant that his reputation, his contacts and his knowledge became part of Sculpture by the Sea from day one, and as a result, leading sculptors around Australia participated in the very first exhibition, like Michael Legrand, Richard Goodwin and James Rogers. Let's go back 20 years to that first phone call I made to Ron Robertson-Swann. Hi Ron, how are you doing?
Hi David.
You're looking a bit older.
Sculpture by the Sea takes its toll one way or another, so it was a great adventure. It was the beginning of a great adventure, and it was a pleasant surprise to receive a call like that, because serious sculpture wasn't getting any serious attention.
One of the key moments for me in that first year's show was sitting with you and Michael Legrand on the cliff edge at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just before we started to plan the de-install. And we realised something major had been created. How did you feel at that time, and what was going through your head both then and possibly for the future?
I knew what the sculptors felt, that they needed some serious attention. But what I didn't know is the public also needed that exposure. And that was the key element for its growth into the future for me, because the public were able to see this in their own backyard, as it were, and they were free, and they were saying what they thought.
A key step for that first show, I don't know if you remember, was the extraordinary response we had from artists to the call for submissions.
Yeah, I think there were some 120 when John McDonald and I sat down to begin to sort them out. We had to find a way of putting them in different categories, different conventions of sculpture. And kind of there was the seed too, I think, for us making sure that it was a broad church of all the activities that were going on in sculpture.
As that very first day unfolded, how did you feel walking around the first exhibition?
Amazed, and that it came together so quickly, and putting sculptures in a public place is no easy task. And then, but one of the things I do remember was I think we had 5 judges. There was the burden of how you could possibly pick a winner, something that I'm not sympathetic to generally. So for me, there was an enormous burden of responsibility, along with the great joy of seeing all these things in the landscape, and in such a dramatic landscape.
We then got very lucky. Andrea Stretton commissioned me to do 5 Sculpture by the Seas around Australia for the 1998 Olympic Arts Festival. And with your help, you introduced me to key people across the country. What do you remember about the impetus that this gave to Sculpture by the Sea?
It changed our status. It was a massive lift in how we were viewed by others, that we could organise these things and put on serious shows.
You mentioned earlier your discomfort with art prizes.
Yeah, because it's not an athletics competition, and artists want to be able to show their work and for their work to find a proper home. And so the acquisitive prize and giving works to public institutions, I think, became a terrific solution.
From the development of an acquisitive prize, over the years now, more than 70 sculptures from Sculpture by the Sea have been acquired and gifted, or simply acquired for public collections around Australia in 4 different states and territories. And probably the best example of this is the Town of Cottesloe collection, where there's 15 sculptures that have been acquired by artists from, I think, 5 or 6 different countries around the world.
That's been a really important development.
It's our 20th year this year, and everyone at Sculpture by the Sea is working towards making this a special year. At the same time, we've got the usual nuts and bolts of an exhibition. Ron and our other advisors and I are discussing who are going to be on the curatorial panel, and we want to continue our tradition of having an international member, and we've got 2 people that we're talking about at the moment, and hopefully one of them is available. Another key thing which will be just for our 20th year, which we're talking about, is having 10 Australian sculptors, all significant, mid-career to senior sculptors, every one of whom have exhibited in Sculpture by the Sea before, some regularly, some only once or twice or 3 times. This is going to be something that I'm going to enjoy the banter of how we
choose those artists, especially to be invited, rather than go through the submission process, just as recognition of their contribution to Sculpture by the Sea.
And I'm looking forward to making those phone calls.
I always leave that for you, David.
Thank you,
That's
Ron.
got to be, for all the hard work you do at Sculpture by the Sea, there's got to be some joy in it for you as well.